Hey there, welcome to Charting Toward Intimacy, where we're expanding the natural family planning conversation. I'm your host, Ellen Holloway. All right, everybody, we are here with Tricia today. Tricia is going to share with us her NFP journey.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, well, tell us a little bit about yourself and your story.
Well, my name's Tricia, and my husband and I met in 2007, got married in 2012, and then decided in 2017 that we were going to start trying for a baby. We have done NFP our entire marriage. I learned the Billings ovulation method, and then I did that the whole time. I didn't even know that there were other methods until kind of recent-ish. I feel like probably somewhere along in the infertility journey is when I started to learn that, there's more than one. I sort of just thought there was one method and I was doing it.
Yeah, you are not alone
right.
in that thought. I think a lot of us, that was myself. I learned a symptothermal method and that I thought that was NFP.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Awesome. So you guys started trying to have a baby and then it didn't happen immediately.
Exactly. So by January of 2018, we still were not pregnant. I know they say that it can take up to a year, but I also felt like I didn't want to wait a year to seek help because I knew from the tracking that it wasn't an issue with timing. So it felt like it could be something else. I was hopeful that it was nothing and that we just needed more time, but I called an infertility clinic near our home at that time in January. Before that appointment, I had started reading Taking Charge of Your Fertility. And in that, I realized I thought that I suspected that I might have a luteal phase defect. So my luteal phase was pretty irregular and it never was a full 2 weeks. It could be 9 days, it could be 10, 11, but it always shifted where my ovulation didn't. And so I definitely suspected that. And I wanted to talk about that when we went in for our infertility consult. So we go in for this consult. I brought my charts. I brought up the luteal phase defect. I explained that we had been doing NFP for X amount of years. And I asked if I have that, what can we do? And I was really brushed off.
That's so frustrating. It's so frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. She told me that, they're not really sure if like a luteal phase defect is really a thing that affects your ability to get pregnant.
And this is a fertility clinic that's saying
a conventional, conventional fertility clinic.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So she's telling me that. And then she's telling me if we do suspect that that's the issue, we would give you Clomid to help you ovulate earlier in the hopes that your luteal phase would be longer, which now after everything I've learned makes no sense at all. Because once you ovulate, the hormonal process of your luteal is in process. That is not affected by the day of your cycle that you ovulate.
Right. Moving ovulation up is not going to change how long your luteal phase is. You have an issue with the hormones going on in the luteal phase, not in the earlier phases of your cycle. So moving ovulation is going to do nothing for a luteal phase problem.
And I thought that was weird, but I honestly, at that time, I didn't question it because I wasn't, I'm looking to this clinic, they're the experts, and I'm really kind of defaulting to whatever they think. And I didn't quite know yet how to advocate for myself. And I really hoped that it wasn't the problem, that there was no problem. So, I'm not sitting there thinking this makes no sense. I'm like, okay, whatever. If this is it. This is it. So, they decided to do some testing on me and my husband. So I had some blood work done to check my hormones. She really didn't even look at my charting or anything she had nothing. She didn't know what to do with that.
Let's just pause really quick because I do know the end of her story. And we'll get to it in a little while. But the fact that they did testing on your hormone levels, they did blood work on you and didn't really find anything initially. That goes to show the importance of doing hormone blood work on specific days of your cycle, depending on when you ovulated. So I'm just throwing that out there, guys. It's actually really important.
Exactly. So I do the blood test and that comes back normal, they have my husband do a sperm analysis, which again, because this is a conventional clinic, was done, via masturbation, which we didn't feel great about, but it was kind of like, we just sort of thought that this is how it's done. Like there is no other way, which
Sure.
we later learned that there is a different way through NaPro. They have the perforated condoms that can collect the sperm sample through the process of intercourse by using this like perforated condom. So you're not preventing anything, but you're still like collecting.
Right. And there's some episodes that we did with Melissa Buchan, the implications of IVF episodes that are a couple episodes back. And she does talk about that her fertility clinic that she runs has that option available. So go back and look at those episodes and the links in those episodes if you are curious and want to know more about this perforated condom and options along those lines.
Yeah. So, but for the early stages of our infertility journey, I never heard of that. I didn't even think that was a thing. And we just were like, okay, we just have to do whatever we have to do to find this information, and it's medically necessary. So it is what it is. And at that point, we found that his sperm counts were lower than normal. They were not within normal range, and all consideration of my luteal phase, any hormone issues that I might be having, like, were out the window. The clinic called, said he has this low sperm count, and they said, this is it. This is what's preventing you from being able to get pregnant. And I asked again, like, well, are we sure? Like, there's nothing wrong with my luteal phase, or it couldn't be whatever. And they were like, no, this is it. And so I said, okay. And we were referred to the male factor infertility specialist within that clinic. He recommended some supplements that we could try, and then, told us to come back. So we saw the urologist and determined that my husband had a grade 1 varicocele. And if you're not familiar with what a varicocele is, it's kind of like the equivalent of a varicose vein in the testicle. And so it's like this expanded vein that's getting a lot of blood flow, which causes a lot of heat. And so the temperature isn't regulated well near the testicles. It's causing it to be too hot. And we know that you need temperature control in order to have a normal sperm count and production and all of those things.
Right. And so the doctor found that it was a grade 1, which, as you explained to me, Tricia, there's kind of like 3 different levels. The first level being the lowest. And so that would affect his sperm count the least, basically, is kind of the idea. So if you have a grade 3, it's going to really affect the sperm count. If you have a grade 1, it might not even be the reason why he has low sperm count.
Exactly. So when we went back to the male factor infertility specialist after determining he has the grade 1 varicocele, and when they're a lower grade like this, a lot of times treating them doesn't result in any better like sperm testing outcomes. That you could, the way to treat it is to surgically correct it. And he really scared us off of that, basically, because he mentioned that if it's not done like properly, and if blood somehow, it's like blood or something escapes, I think blood escapes or leaks or something, that it could cause the body to create antibodies against the sperm, and then the sperm count will actually drop even more, which really scared me.
I mean, there's always risk when you go in for a surgery, right? And so at that time, you guys determined, okay, let's not try to fix this because it's this level 1, so it might not even make a difference. And so where did you turn next? What happened next?
Yeah, so the only thing the clinic could offer us was either doing IUI, which is intrauterine insemination, or IVF, which is in vitro fertilization. The male factor infertility doctor, he basically told us, like, you're not going to be able to get pregnant without IVF. We felt like IVF was never really on the table, although there definitely were some moments of desperation where I don't want to say considered it, because we never really considered it in earnest, but we would kind of speak to each other like, I don't know, is this possible? but
Sure.
we never ended up crossing that line. But for us, we knew the church's teaching on it, and I felt so uneasy with the idea of creating multiple embryos and then
Mhm.
not knowing how many you would get and having to make a decision to either store them forever, destroy them, or donate them. Because to me, that's a life.
Yeah, so
So
that creation of additional lives is one of the biggest factors of IVF that can yeah, bring up all those questions and things like that. And so what you had said to me before, that like IUI sort of felt like a little bit less of a moral issue. Like it was
yeah.
like the lesser of the two evils sort of a thing.
Well, so I did look up the church's teachings on IUI, and I was quite surprised to find that it wasn't technically allowed.
Mhm.
I it, I guess I felt like abandoned by the church. I'm having these issues. I'm looking for answers, and what are they giving me? They're giving me no. They're telling me
Mhm.
no over and over. And at this time, all I know that are my available options are IUI or IVF. I'm not yet familiar with NaPro, or that there could be any hope outside of these two treatments. And when you Google infertility and you Google treatments or options, NaPro doesn't come up anywhere unless you're
Right.
specifically searching Catholic infertility, like help or NaPro or something like that. It will not come up. So at that point, I felt like these are my two options. I know that IVF is a no go. I don't feel great necessarily about IUI, but we really want to have a baby. We prayed about it. I believed at that time and that God gave me the green light that yes, like you're going to have a family. And so it just sort of felt like I didn't really have a choice, which
Mhm.
obviously I did. And I could still have chosen to say no, but we didn't. By this time, we had been trying for over a year. This clinic is telling us that, we can't get pregnant without IVF. We definitely know we don't want to do that. We're just feeling very devastated and defeated. And so we feel like, you know what, we're just going to try a round of IUI. And the clinic wasn't even super confident that IUI could be beneficial for us, but we could afford it, and we just felt like it was all we had.
Sure. Yeah. So you guys went into the clinic to do IUI, and the
Mhm.
first time you did it, his sperm sample didn't even have any viable sperm. Is that right?
That's correct. So my ovulation had happened a little sooner than it normally did that month. And so we were like, we could still try on our own and do the IUI. And I got a positive OPK. And then they were like, okay, you got to come in and do the IUI. And there was nothing because he had such low sperm count. And then because we had had intercourse, there was just like nothing there.
Yeah.
But that was devastating because that is not normal. Like that, just because you have sex doesn't mean that the next time there should be nothing in there. um and so that was really, we're going there, and yes, we have some reservations about it, but also we're like really hopeful that like maybe this is it, maybe we're going to walk out and like I'm going to be pregnant and our baby's coming. And then we were sitting in the waiting room, and I remember her coming to get us, and I said like we can't do it because there was nothing. And I just remember bawling my eyes out when we left the clinic, and I'm pretty sure I was supposed to go back to work or something, and
Mhm.
I just was like I can't come in. And so the
Definitely.
month after that we tried IUI again, and this time there was some sperm in his sample, but very, very little, to the point where they kind of were like, we'll give you the option. If you want to do it, you can, but there's pretty much not very much in here. But we're only looking at like a small portion, and it only takes one. And, they were kind of like not saying don't do it, but not saying yes, do it. It was very
Right.
like, you can do it if you want to. Who knows, miracles can happen, but it's not likely.
Right.
And we just decided to do it because we were there, and that didn't work either. So after this, we're kind of like, okay, well, what do we do now? Because we feel like we don't really have anywhere to turn. Although my husband had been looking into varicocele repair on his own and researching that and really wanting that. And he kept bringing that up to me, and I kept pushing him off because that doctor had scared me. at
Mm-hmm.
the idea of doing the repair, but he really felt like we needed to explore this option. And so eventually I said, okay. His last semen analysis before the surgeries, he had less than 1 million. And for anyone who's not familiar, normal is between 15 and 32 million, I think. But most men have like 80 million or 70 million. And his last one before the repair was under 1 million. And a
Wow.
lot of the other parameters that they check, like morphology and motility, like they don't even run those when it's so low.
Sure.
This seems like the right next step. And so we decided to do it. And it's like an outpatient surgery. He did have to be put under, but I just took him to the surgery center and then took him home. And after his surgery, I was in the waiting room. The doctor comes out and he sits down next to me and he like takes his scrub cap off and he's like kind of shaking his head. And he says to me, I'm so glad you decided to do the surgery, because when we got in there, your husband is very vascular. Like his anatomy is very vascular. And what felt like externally to be a grade 1, once he like got eyes on it, it was more, he thought, a grade 2, maybe even a grade 3.
Wow.
Yes. And I asked him, okay, so does that mean the chances for improvement are greater because the grade level was probably worse than what we thought? And he said yes. He couldn't promise that it would get back to a normal range necessarily, but he thought that there was a better chance that we could see a bigger jump in his sperm count numbers.
Sure.
After 6-ish more months of trying, I started seeing a therapist in July of 2019. And I specifically chose a Christian group. I just wanted someone who was on my same faith page because I knew that was a big part of this.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had a lot of anger towards God at that time. My faith wasn't something that was carrying me through. I felt like my faith was crumbling a little bit under
Sure.
the weight of all of this. And to say that she changed my life would be an understatement. The first time I saw her, I started telling her my story. And I really kind of went in there just like, I just need some coping mechanisms. Like I'm not handling this well. And I come to find out that she's Catholic herself and that she had suffered with infertility. And now this is just someone I picked off of the webpage. There was nothing in her bio about her being Catholic or her dealing with anything infertility specific. So I know that God put me with her.
Yeah. He
Like very
specifically
specifically
chose
yes.
her to be your therapist. That's just beautiful.
She shares with me at that visit that she had gone through like years of infertility, that she went on to have 4 children, and that she's Catholic herself. And I left feeling so much lighter. Like I knew I still had a long road ahead, but I left feeling so much better. And I had some hope for the first time in a long time. And I thought I was going to her for just help with coping, but really she helped me so much more with reconnecting with my faith. Through the ways that she helped me reconnect with my faith, I learned about NaPro. And so I started to dig a little deeper into what NaPro is. So I made an appointment with a conventional clinic, and then I had made an appointment with a couple NaPro providers. The NaPro providers are scheduling really far out, but there was a little family medicine practice right near my home. They do some NaPro stuff. They don't treat the couple, they just treat the woman. Like they can help you with your charting and like troubleshooting your charts. So I did call and I asked to make an appointment, and I had to go through their Creighton method class before I could get the appointment. And I was a little salty about that because I had been doing billings for years, and I felt like, just give me the Creighton handbook. I don't need the class. I just need you to tell me how you want me to notate my fertility signs, and I'll do that. Like I already know how to find them. I already know they're there. But they made me do the class. And so I do the class, and then they wouldn't let me make an appointment for NaPro, I think, until you charted for either like a month or 2 months. And at this point, we've been trying to get pregnant for a couple of years. And I mean, that just every single month extra that you have to wait feels like torture.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was salty about that too, but I was like, okay, whatever, that's sooner than the other doctor. So I have to take what I can get. And I was in the middle of saying a novena to St. Therese, and I got a call from that clinic that the person I was supposed to see had to take an unexpected leave and I needed to reschedule. And when I explained what I was needing to be seen for, they were like, oh, well, you can just see so-and-so like next week. And so I jumped on that appointment, and I went in, and I think she's a nurse practitioner. who does NaPro, and I brought my charts, and she took me seriously about my short luteal phase.
Finally, someone.
Yay! Yes. And so, she orders blood work for me, and so we did that, and we determined that my progesterone was dropping off too soon, and that I truly did have a luteal phase defect. And man, it felt so good to have somebody take it seriously. And I also felt so frustrated that years prior, it got brushed off, and I knew it this entire time, but I questioned myself, I doubted myself, and I didn't have the tools that I had now to know who to go to, who could help me.
Right.
But I was glad to be getting help. And so she recommended doing HCG injections. There's a couple ways that you can treat luteal phase defects. But we started the injections. After doing that for a little while, we transitioned over to the care of a different doctor in this area who's a NaPro provider. And he also does like surgical procedures, because he would do the testing and the treating of my husband. Whereas Little Flower was just treating me. They really couldn't, like, they didn't do anything surgical. They didn't do anything with treating your spouse. And before I had actually seen her, I'm skipping back a little bit, but when I first learned about NaPro, I looked into it, and a lot of it was very much, like most of the information that you find relates to PCOS and endometriosis, and how they can do these surgical procedures to treat those conditions or help treat those conditions. And so I really went into NaPro feeling kind of like, I don't know if this is going to help us, because as far as I know, these have been ruled out. I don't have PCOS. I don't have endometriosis. That's not my issue. Like, what about people who are having infertility that's not caused by those conditions? Is NaPro still appropriate? And I thought the answer was going to be no, it is not. The answer is yes. If you're having infertility issues and you don't have endo, you don't have PCOS, you can still see a NaPro provider, and they can help you. So we transitioned over to a doctor who was associated with a bigger medical hospital here, and he was able to treat us both. He wanted to retest my husband. Before I could see the NaPro provider, we did follow up with a traditional clinic here. At that point, I was feeling pretty confident that we weren't going to utilize any services there with a traditional clinic, but we still thought we have to get my husband's sperm rechecked. We have to do the analysis. And so we just thought we need to go to a traditional clinic to do that. And so we went there, and they retested him. And when they called to give us those results, she says, okay, so I have his results here, and everything looks normal. And you would think that I would be overjoyed, but actually my first feeling was this flash of like very intense anger, because I was convinced that she called the wrong person.
Yeah.
Because he had never had a normal test ever. I said, he's never had a normal result. Like, can you check, did you call the right person? Do you have the right patient file? Like, his last reading was under 1 million, his last count. And now you're telling me that he's normal. I'm like, what do you mean by normal? And she looked back, and she said, oh, wow. Like, when she saw his previous one, she's like, yeah, he did. She's like, no, like, I have the right one, and it's normal. Like, it's 30 million or something. And in that, we had a huge feeling of elation, and like a weight had been lifted. But then we also felt like, well, if this is the new result, then why are we still not pregnant? What is the problem then? If this isn't the problem anymore.
Yeah.
That's when seeing NaPro really like changed everything, and taking my LP seriously. Because we knew then that it must have had to do something with me.
Right. Yeah. So when you got transitioned over to the NaPro doctor then.
Yes.
And
the surgeon. Yes.
The surgeon. Yeah. So you had been working on the LP problem for a couple of cycles now.
Yes. Doing the HCG injections. And then we transitioned out to his care, Dr. Putoff. And we went in for a consult with him. And I just remember being like so nervous, because I didn't want to get any negative news, but also feeling really hopeful. And so in his office was so wonderful. He was so kind. He took so much time with us. He answered all of our questions. So we saw him and he wanted to retest my husband's sperm counts. And then this is when we learned about using the perforated condom. And we kind of questioned like, how accurate is this? But it's accurate. Great normal ranges. We went over my treatment plan. I told him that I was doing the HCG injections. I asked him if he wanted me to continue doing that and if he would take over prescribing that. And he did. He felt like that was the way to go. And so really like he left no stone unturned, and the things that he was asking and the things that he was testing for, none of the conventional clinics were asking me about this or even bringing this up or talking about it. So it was pretty amazing. It was really amazing. And, we asked him, now that we've had this retesting done, now that I've had all this testing done, because I also had done like the thing where they flush your tubes and they do the saline in your uterus. The traditional clinic had ordered those to rule out any like physical issues that maybe I might have with like a blocked tube or anything like that. So, we really went to him with everything, and we asked him like, what do you think our chances are? And he told us that he thought we had a 70 to 80% chance.
Fabulous.
So this was like a huge difference from 2.5 years prior of being told you have no chance and you have to do IVF. And that also gets me so fired up, because how many couples are being told you have no chance, you have to do IVF, and they're believing it. Because why wouldn't you? Because I believed it, because I thought this doctor, I'm looking to him as the expert, and he, I'm sure, truly believes what he's saying. He probably believes that that's true too. So I'm not hating on him, but how many couples are told this and go down a road that for whatever reason they don't want to go down, and maybe they didn't need that at all. Like, I would really love to know. I don't know that we can ever really know, but, so that really gets me fired up. And I will tell anybody who wants to listen about NaPro, you do not have to be Catholic. I know your audience is probably mostly Catholic, but you do not have to be Catholic in order to see a NaPro provider. It's just the Catholics who seem to know about it, and like nobody else seems to know. It just shocks me that even when you like, even in fertility, like support groups and like Facebook groups or whatever that are on social media and on the internet, like when you're looking for people's stories, like when you're going through infertility, you're looking for other people's stories that kind of mirror yours, that have a happy ending to give you some kind of hope, right? In all of those stories, I never once saw anything about NaPro.
All right. So tell us your happy ending.
Okay. So, we needed to do the HCG injections for 6 months. It was on the 6th cycle that, we got pregnant. You have to wait until day 17 post like ovulation to do a pregnancy test, because the HCG from the medication will give you a false positive.
Right. Because HCG is what, an at-home pregnancy test is testing for.
Yes. And it's day like 16 and we're getting ready for bed, and I still don't have my period. And I'm like super scared that I'm going to get it like overnight, because that had happened to me a previous cycle. And I like don't want to get my hopes up, but I know I've never made it this far before. And that morning, I took the test, and the whole time I'm doing that, I'm thinking, my period's going to start right now. Like, I just know it. I know it. It's just going to happen. It's going to like happen. It's going to happen. But no, I mean, it was positive. I dipped it and I set it down, and it lit up positive like right away. And we just like couldn't believe it. They have you come in at 8 weeks to do an internal ultrasound. That really made it real for my husband. We left and he was like, whoa, like this is happening. And I was still like in shock. Like, I think I'm still in shock. Like even now, and my baby's like 10 months old, I just was like, is this real? I can't even believe it.
That's awesome. Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Tricia. We are going to do a follow-up episode. So check that out next week. We're going to be talking a little bit more about, the religious side of the story and what was going on, and where God's hand was really working in some of these different aspects of her story. I also want to mention that if this is something that you're struggling with, if some of the church teachings on things like IVF or IUI or something that you're not really sure about, these are really great things that I would love to discuss with you in coaching. As a couple of episodes ago, I did an episode with Emily Frazee where we talked about the NFP mindset coaching that I do. And that is, these are the kinds of things, these are the kind of conversations that I have in coaching. And so I would love to see you there. If you, or even if someone you can send this episode or my information their way. If you're not following us on Instagram, be sure to check us out at Charting Toward Intimacy. And if you want to reach out to me, be sure to send me an email or reach out to me on Instagram. Until next time.